Hello, everybody, and welcome to Hash Rate. My name is Mark Jeffrey, and I am here with my good friend Alex Miller of Hiro Systems. Hello, Alex. How you doing?
How's it going?
Pretty good, pretty good. So where are you? I like people to know where you are in the world.
I'm in Bozeman, Montana.
Yes.
On my nice little homestead that is ready for hyperinflation and a complete meltdown of the world.
So you are the king of the bunkers out in Montana.
Yeah, I actually will admit I did just place my order. I've been sitting here on like a local wired internet connection, and I realized maybe it's time to go get Starlink and have a nice little satellite backup. So,
oh my God, the shit hits the fan. I'm coming up to see you, my friend.
You better have some useful skills.
I have a few. So I grew up in New Hampshire, so I'm not just like
that's
totally,
true. Okay,
right?
yeah. Basically,
So,
anyone who like grew up on a farm or in a similar situation is welcome.
yes. Well, I do appreciate the apocalypse invite. So I brought you on today because you're a big brain, and you and I have had a lot of chats sort of offline, just sort of casually about all the current events going on frequent occasions. And many times after we get done speaking, I'm like, God damn it! I wish I'd done a hash rate with that because that was great. And so I today decided, well, you know what? Let's just do a current event one today with you about these issues. So let's dive right into sort of the bank failure stuff first of all. So Silicon Valley Bank, Silvergate, and Signature all go belly up. Mm-hmm. Signature under sort of suspicious circumstances by some accounts because it was a crypto bank, possibly was assassinated. As the bullets were flying around, they sort of turned to the right and said, well, we can kill this guy and blame it on the war and no one will notice, right? That's one story. So my question, first of all, to you is, what do you think about all of that and that specific interpretation?
Yeah, so let's go in order of the three failures, right? First up was Silvergate, which was a long time coming, and I think, was actually honestly in everything a fairly orderly wind down, and basically hit by the exact same problem that SVB had, right? They just had too many outflows, had to sell too many things at losses. They were never. Silvergate was also tiny bank, right? SVB was $200 billion in deposits. I think Silvergate was like 12 or 15 at peak, right?
Oh, really? I didn't realize it was that small.
Silvergate was much smaller than SVB or Signature.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think Silvergate just was what it was and had a lot of problems in different respects. SVB, we're learning more and more about it every day, but I mean, it does look like they were probably slightly more overexposed to the interest rate issues than the average bank, but
because they weren't hedging. Like I saw some chart where they looked like they didn't hedge at all.
I think it's not just that they didn't hedge; it's that they got, and this actually goes back to the over depositor thing, is they got $100 billion in additional deposits. They basically doubled the size of their deposits in like a 12, 18 month period from like late 19 into mid 2021.
And why was that? Where did those deposits come from?
All the the tech boom, in the COVID tech boom, right? All of the money coming in from IPOs and from, these $500 million financing rounds. I'm going to say all. It obviously wasn't all, but they all got deposited at SVB.
But maybe half.
Right?
But like half of them probably.
I mean, well, $100 billion worth, right?
Yeah.
So it was all this money coming in, right? And then they got to stick it somewhere because they got to make a return on capital. Yay, one of the trade-offs to capitalism sometimes. Yeah. And so they stick it all in, and then the Fed starts hiking rates, and I think they seem to have underestimated the double exposure risk that they had, right? So let's take Chase Bank, right, which is obviously going to be fine, and even if it wasn't, it's
double exposure. You mean we're in risky tech startups, A, and then B, the deposits. Is that what you mean by double? Or
no. Yeah, by double, I mean that they were exposed on both on the asset side and the liability side. So if you look at Chase, right, Chase Bank probably holds a whole bunch of underwater bonds as well, right? Yep. What Chase Bank doesn't have is a massively over-concentrated depositor base of tech startups who raised all this money, can't raise money now, and so not only do they not have as many new deposits coming in, but everyone's drawing down those balances that they did. And that's what was really killing SVB, right?
Yeah.
And this was known. I got my first heads up from investors in November of last year, saying basically, we're looking at the quarterlies from SVB and we don't like it. And like you should be in treasuries long term, like you should be kind of be protecting yourself. But like, and the message is kind of like, we don't think SVB is going to go under, but like these numbers aren't good, right? So it was months, and this is all like how I'm not going to name names of who have been the annoying people on Twitter in all caps, but they're like, how did short sellers know? Was there inside linking? Right. No, they're called public reports. There were 2 or 3 quarters worth of reports where plenty of people were looking at it. And you've got Twitter threads from January and from February being like, these numbers are really bad, right?
Yeah.
And what happened is that they basically went from theoretical, the whole thing kicked off because on Wednesday, that day before, right, basically SVB had announced, hey, enough people have pulled enough money out that these are going from unmarked losses of, in theory, if we had to sell, to, hey, we just had to sell $20 billion worth of bonds and took a $2 billion hit on it.
Right.
So, yeah.
But people didn't know in advance. That's interesting. I didn't actually realize that there was that much sort of advance warning on this.
Yeah. People knew that if they had to take their held to maturity securities and sell them at current prices, they were going to start wiping out their equity. And that's exactly what happened. And so, yeah, that's the challenge that SVB had, is that they simply were more exposed both on the assets they were investing in and on the deposits they were holding getting drawn down faster.
So what do you think? So was that the case at Silvergate? Because you said that had been sort of ongoing death spiral for a while. What was that?
Yeah,
what was that death spiral?
So Silvergate was way overexposed on crypto companies.
Yeah.
And so because of the Send network.
Yeah.
And so that was a great feature, but as soon as basically they started pulling from that, it's the exact same thing kind of happened.
So pretty much FTX is what killed them. So because it's the same thing.
Yeah, it started the kill on them.
Yeah. Okay, so that started the avalanche.
Frankly, the other thing is, I don't know. I've heard varying degrees. Like there might also be criminal investigations with Silvergate and things, but whereas SVB is very unlikely to.
Right.
Signature is the really interesting one, right? SVB is pretty well understood. So Signature had concentrated exposure in 2 industries. One was much less so than Silvergate. They had a bunch of crypto exposure for the same reason, right? Like they had their own network with their own Signet with their own 24/7 rails, which is was great for like Coinbase and Circle to deal with each other. But as anyone from the New York world knows, they had massive CRE, commercial real estate exposure, right? They were in fact, that's actually how I knew and did my first transfers in and out of Signature was a decade ago when I was back in New York leasing offices and things for tech startups. Is Signature was the bank of choice for like a huge number of commercial real estate folks because it was like a New York based thing and
right.
They knew it. So it's in 2019, 2020 is when they sort of really started pivoting and also taking in a lot of crypto dollars. My understanding is that part of the potential run that happened was not on the crypto side. It was on the commercial real estate side. It was that and those guys have the same way that like SVB got tanked by a bunch of venture capitalists emailing their founders and being like, "Yo, be careful here," and like maybe get your money out. The CRE world, especially like the New York CRE world, is just as tight knit, and they got hit, I think, by the same thing there. That said, I'm also not convinced that this wasn't like a convenient time. Like, I'm sure they were in trouble and had bad numbers. And you and I were talking about this, right? Like, it's very hard for regulators to just show up if nothing's wrong and create an excuse to shut something down, right? There's enough eyes, there'd be enough yelling. But man, you got a lot of fog of war. You got a lot of questions. The numbers aren't looking big. Taking over a bank is always a judgment call. For anyone who doesn't read Matt Levine's Money Stuff newsletter, you should absolutely be subscribed to it and reading it every day. It's wonderful. And one of the points he made is like, because I think he was talking about credit. Actually, this is when he was talking about Credit Suisse. Is he said like, look, regulators will come in and take over the bank when there's a 30% chance of it failing, right? Because their concern is the systemic risk. There's always a lot of question mark and judgment calls, right? Because if there was a 30% chance of it going down, that means there was a 70% chance that it wasn't going down.
Right.
And so, yeah, I look at what happened with Signature and I see someone that the government had made very clear they didn't like because of the crypto exposure side and have reinforced by not letting anyone buy the crypto side of the business. And maybe someone.
Do we know that for sure? Because I know that was the rumor.
Again,
it's a rumor at this point.
It's
even
a rumor,
now, right?
but but that's the point. Is that
so? In the rumor is just so people know, the rumor is that when they decided to sell the assets of Signature Bank, the government supposedly said you can sell everything except for the crypto assets and the crypto customers. That part of the business, we're just
basically those deposits
dead.
going back to the customers, and they need to go find a new bank. We're not letting me sold. You know, who knows? When those first reports came out, I saw that as them just basically trying to make sure that Signet went away, and that they don't really care if a crypto company has a bank. They just didn't want Signet around. Again, I don't know if we will know. I'm sure there will be lawsuits and FOIA requests and everything all over this.
Signet is the real-time payment rails internal to the bank, which allowed for real-time settlement. So why do you think that was so dangerous? Because it competes with the upcoming FedNow master network?
No, I think just because it makes crypto stuff work better and easier, right?
Okay.
And it's like just a special service, right? So, right now, I guess is the quick example for folks is, if you have money in Coinbase and you want to mint it into USDC and there's not enough USDC available, so Circle needs to go mint some, right? What both Signet and SendNet or whatever Send Network at Silvergate allowed was saying, hey, instead of having to wait until Monday morning for FedWire to open up and us to send a wire transfer from Coinbase's bank account to someone else's bank account.
To Circle.
If you both have to Circle's bank account. If you both have bank accounts at this bank, we'll just instantly do it overnight, right? So basically, you know what it is? Is it Zelle, right? If everyone here sends, their friends $1,000 on Zelle. Well, if basically you just had crypto companies and you can send each other $100 million or $1 billion instead of, 3,500, which is, I think, the cap for Zelle or whatever it is. So that's basically what it was. And, it made things a lot faster, a lot easier for a lot of these companies. And it's also, it's a classic network effect, right? This is why every crypto company, or at least every crypto company that was like financial infrastructure, like Circle or Coinbase or Binance, any other exchange, had accounts at both Signature and Silvergate, is because you had to be in those banks to use that intrabank network with each other. Yeah, it was a classic network effect thing.
Yeah. So now, when the regulators seized Signature, they effectively destroyed $4 billion worth of shareholder value, right? So what's the call on that? I mean, I know that regulators will seize banks that appear to be failing, but if they are in fact solvent, do they have criminal liability for
criminal? No, definitely not criminal. Honestly, you'd have to ask a lawyer what the civil
criminal's
liability.
probably the wrong way, but you know what I'm saying?
You'd have to ask on the civil liability side. My understanding is bank regulators, basically the trade-off you get by being a bank and being effectively backed by the government, right?
Yep.
Is you give up a lot of autonomy to them, right? And they can walk in and do a lot of things at a lot of times and demand a lot, right? They can look at all your books whenever they want. And in this case, if they walk in and say, hey, we think you're insolvent, they can take the bank. There's a famous story from 2008 where the CEO of Washington Mutual, right, which is still the largest bank failure in history, like $350 billion, got on a plane in San Francisco in 2008 to fly to New York. It was one way or the other. I'm pretty sure he was in SF. He was flying to New York. He took off as the CEO of a bank. He landed as not one. That is how long it took the FDIC to walk in, seize the bank, and sell it to JP Morgan Chase.
Wow. That's crazy. But yeah,
it's all about systemic risk, right? The FDIC, this entire system dates back to the Great Depression, where you had all these bank runs, and the entire reason it's constructed is to preserve, people's faith and the stability of the bank system, and that is what they are optimizing for 100 times out of 100.
Okay. All right, let's move on from that now, because I want to move on to Balaji before we run out of time here. So Balaji famously made a bet on Twitter that he believes that in the next 90 days, Bitcoin will be worth $1 million per coin, mostly because the banking system is in so much trouble that every bank is right now insolvent. And that will start to show up in the price of the United States dollar. So the dollar will devalue to such a degree that Bitcoin, even if it doesn't, go up in value, just if it stays even, it will be worth $1 million per coin. What do you think of that bet? Do you think he's right? And what do you think of his reasoning behind why he made the bet?
I think it's adorable, is what I think it is. No, I mean, So, okay, let's look at the fundamentals of this. Yeah, the fundamental idea is a lot of banks, basically that pretty much every bank is insolvent right now for the exact same reason that SVB went under, right?
Yeah.
Well, ignoring the fact that
So you agree every bank right now is insolvent?
I think that if the entirety from the reports I've seen, if every single bank had to liquidate the entirety of their held to maturity bond portfolios right now,
yep,
would that potentially wipe out all of the bank equity? Yeah, that is in theory could happen.
Follow-on question, isn't every fractional reserve lending based bank always insolvent?
No.
Okay, so this is a unique situation.
This is a unique situation because the Fed jacked rates so much, right? Like the issue here is the reason that all these bonds, the reason that a 1.5% treasury bond is worth 85 cents on the dollar right now is because you can buy a new one at 5%.
Yes,
right?
Totally understand that. Yeah, I think everybody gets it.
Right. And so if interest rates were still 1.5%, all those bonds would be worth $1 instead of 85 cents.
Right.
But again, this only comes up if you can't hold them to maturity.
If you're forced to sell.
This is not 2008 where the assets aren't worth what we thought they were worth. We know exactly what they're worth. And, 8.5 years from now, basically 10 years from when they bought them, if you can hold them to them, they're going to be worth that. And so the program that the Fed introduced to basically backstop SVB and any other banks that run into these issues is basically doing that. What they said is, hey, for the next 12 months, you can sell us a 10-year treasury bond that is only worth 85 cents. You can sell it for the dollar that it will be worth, basically, right? So they're basically just saying, cool, if you have to liquidate a held to maturity security, you're not going to lose money on it right now. Because that's what did in SVB. Now, in theory, you see people going around like, for the Fed to do this to everyone, it'd cost them $2 trillion. Well, yes, except they're not going to have to do it to everyone, right? And that was the whole reason of them introducing this program in the first place is, hey, and this is how bank runs in general work, as long as people are confident that the bank's not going to go under, then they won't pull out their money and the bank won't go under. It's only a problem when people start to pull their money out.
Right.
So first off, to even have to print the $2 trillion in new money that's being talked about, everyone would have to pull all their money from all the banks.
Right. So $2 trillion is like an upper boundary.
And if you can't understand why that would be a bigger problem than we have now. Yeah.
We agree. It's not a bad solution given what we have to work with.
Other than that, might the Fed have to start cutting rates and printing some more cash? Yeah. Look, is this going to make the Fed's fighting job much harder? Without a doubt. Could it spike inflation back up? Yeah. If they have to start cutting rates and printing more money, of course that's going to make inflation worse.
Yeah.
I think the idea that inflation we're going to go to hyperinflation in the US in the next 90 days is unrealistic when you just counter changes in behavior, right?
Yeah.
We can analogize this with COVID numbers and things and how a lot of the early estimates presumed 10 million people die if no behavior changes come in, right? If you start changing behavior, things do. But the other thing is, man, I love Bitcoin. I hold a bunch of Bitcoin. I'm building on top of Bitcoin. If you think that you can wipe out the entire banking system and transition to a Bitcoin-based system in 90 days without the knock-on effects of that, including basically, honestly, up to and potentially including nuclear war, you're out of your mind. That rate of change at a global societal level would probably mean the utter collapse of society. And
what do you think about Balaji? So I don't think Balaji believes his bet either. I don't think any of us do, really.
I think Balaji's trying to make a larger point. I think he's a true believer about the larger point of, hey, at some point in the future, the U.S. dollar will no longer be the reserve currency. We need to get off of government-controlled rails. Bitcoin's going to be the future. I think he's a true believer in all that. But, I think a lot of people, basically, someone came at him being like, oh, in 90 days, this lemon. He's like, cool, I'll make you a bet to that because it attracts attention. And
we all agree there. It's a PR stunt on the most basic level. But even given that, and watching Balaji for a while, I do think that in his heart of hearts, he does believe that there is still a very large systemic problem with the banking system right now, today, and with the value of the dollar right now today, and that maybe not in 90 days, but some point in the near future, and define that like a year, within the next year, there will be cascading collapse and a cascading hyperinflation scenario with the U.S. I think he really does believe that.
I think he probably thinks that. Again, to exactly what degree, I couldn't tell you.
Yeah.
But yeah, and to be clear, I think he's right that there's a systemic issue. I don't know
we
if
agree.
It's inevitable, but there's a systemic issue. SVB was not a one-off.
We agree. So do you think there's going to be more bank failures? Do you think that we've staunched the bleeding, or?
I don't think there is going to be additional bank failures in the immediate future without some other proximate trigger, right? Mm-hmm. Something else would have to happen because, again, they have stabilized things, right? They've built enough confidence back up that people aren't pulling their money. And again, banks don't just randomly fail. They only fail because people get worried and start pulling their money out,
right,
causing them to have to realize these currently unrealized losses. Right?
Which doesn't matter now because the Fed's backstopping them.
Right. Now, they only have so much money available.
Well, they have so let's just count this up. We have $2 trillion in the United States. There's also another $4 trillion overseas. So they're basically indirectly bailing out overseas banks without saying they are. They're basically doing it through I'm not going to go through it, but they've got another method for doing it. Yeah. So it's a total of $6 trillion, potentially. It's an upper boundary.
Right. In theory.
That could be injected into the system.
Right. The beauty of this system is they've currently injected $0, right? They've injected the promise of money, and so far that's been it. But if something else happens that causes, folks to start worrying and pulling out their money,
it starts gobbling up that $2 trillion and that $4 trillion.
And by the way, this doesn't have to be directly, it doesn't have to be directly financial, right? It could be if you had civil unrest in a large number of cities in the U.S., right? And people are like, crap, I need to have more cash on hand, right? And you have, a couple million people all go out, you had 10 million people all go pull out $10,000 from their bank account each.
Right.
Oh, hey, you're talking about $100 billion in outflow, right? Like that starts adding up and that leads to cascade effects. So the problem right now is simply the system's more vulnerable. We could see, like I said, there could be $0 that outflow,
right? Or
you could have a ton. It really depends on what happens next. And disasters are when, as it said, not when one thing goes wrong, it's when 12 things go wrong.
Right. So the other part of this thesis from Balaji's is that there's actually an active effort underway by the United States government coordinating multiple regulatory bodies to actually chop off fiat on and off ramps between regular dollars, fiat currency, and Bitcoin in particular, but crypto in general. And and obviously Signature going under, and Silvergate actually did chop two of those rails off, right? It's not the end of the world or other rails, but liquidity is drying up for fiat on and off ramps. Do you think? So Balaji is basically saying that they're shutting the doors. This is like the Red Wedding, and we're all inside, and you can only exit to Bitcoin right now, but soon you won't be able to. Do you think that's happening? Do you think is it possible that we'll live in a world in the United States where you cannot enter or exit Bitcoin through American banks?
So let's see. Number one, there is definitely a campaign here, right? Nick Carter, I think, is coined it as Chokepoint 2.0 after the Chokepoint campaign a few years back that was going after firearms manufacturers.
Yep.
I think at this point it is insane to think that this campaign is not going on. Now you can talk about to what degree it is and exactly what actions are included or not, but there is clearly a very coordinated effort at the federal government level and involving state regulators too, I think, to crack down on crypto companies and on and off ramps. And, again, this is, at the end of the day, the U.S. is still, for all we want to joke or, make aphorisms doing things, it's not an authoritarian state, right? Mm-hmm. And so, if this was China, they can do what China did when China wanted to shut down Bitcoin and literally walk in and just shut down all the firms tomorrow and execute anyone they want.
Right.
They have to at least have the fig leaf of cover here, right? And they know that they can be sued in court if they do things, which is why you have.
Can they though?
Yes, they can.
Okay.
Well, look, the SEC, for instance, the SEC can't just shut down Coinbase. They have to go take them to court, and that's why they sent them a Wells notice a couple days ago. But that can be fun things. So I think they are looking to make things as difficult as they can for people.
Yep.
Within the bounds of the laws and the regulations.
So it's like a harassment campaign. Sort of.
Look, whether it's a harassment campaign or a legitimate use of appropriate regulatory power all comes down to what side of the debate you're on.
Yep.
So,
okay.
Yeah. So, look, the interesting thing is no fiat on ramps have actually been, cut off at this point, to my knowledge. I can't think of, any U.S.
Yeah, I could still use everything that I used before.
Right.
My life hasn't changed.
It's harder for them. It's more expensive for them. They're gonna be spending more money to provide the service. And just by laws of supply and demand, if you drive the costs up, you will drive the demand down. So, yeah, like I said, I think it's part of a coordinated campaign. I think they would prefer that crypto doesn't exist than they does exist. But I don't think they're going to, again, they still have to, are constrained the degree to which they can operate in. But I think they're going to keep pushing it forward and trying to make life as hard as possible for crypto companies to operate.
Yeah, well, I think the other sort of shoe that dropped this week, you know where I stand on most of these issues. I kind of thought that, I'm probably more on the conspiratorial side of the fence than you are, right? So we both know this. But I have long thought that this was malicious. And especially where the Biden White House is concerned, I always thought that they were very, very anti-crypto and malicious, but I didn't really know. I had no real proof, right? I just had, just my gut, my opinion, which is kind of nothing, right? But this week, the White House issued a report on crypto, and when I read it, you've read it, right? I assume
I skimmed it.
I skimmed it. You read enough. You saw enough of it to know what's in it. My reaction to it was it felt to me like Soviet propaganda, right? Where it's it basically said there's absolutely no redeeming qualities of crypto or Bitcoin whatsoever. It's a complete worthless waste of time.
Sure.
It wasn't like we thought about it and these are pretty cool things and these are pretty cool things, but we think it overall has a systemic risk. It was no part of this is cool. It's all lies. It's all scams. Which sounded like, in the old Soviet Union, they'd be like, there is no bread line. Do not look at the line snaking around the corner. It doesn't exist. We have too much food, right? That's how it felt to me. What did it feel like to you?
So, it felt like a political statement from a political actor, right? And actually,
that was a political way of analyzing. So, but did you?
No, but I'm being direct about it,
okay.
And the reason I say this too, and actually, I think as much as I hate to defend the Biden administration on this one, is it was an opinion statement, right? And I think one of the things that is key to the Soviet type propaganda that you cited is it is, for lack of a better term, gaslighting. And I know that that's the hot word of the moment. Everyone likes to argue over how it's used. But they're sort of saying no, you think you're in a bread line, but you're not, right? Or you think the shelves are empty, but they're not. That's different than saying we think this thing has no redeeming value and should be gotten rid of, which is inherently an opinion-based statement. And, you can get into all kinds of things. Not that you could make a statement about crypto that's defamatory, but at least in the U.S., defamation law, it's the difference between, are you saying it's an opinion?
I see.
You know what it's like? It's kind of like calling someone racist, right?
Right.
Which is, in effect, what the Biden administration was doing here, right? People love to say, you're defaming me by calling me a racist, and that's not true. Well, you can't defame someone by calling them a racist because it's a statement of opinion, inherently. Right? And it's a similar thing here. The Biden administration put out what is basically an opinion paper saying, we don't think this is worthwhile or people are using it or that there's a reason to have it around. Okay, we already knew they thought that. They've made that very clear.
We didn't know. I don't think we knew that for sure. I felt like I didn't know that for certain. I feel like now I do. So
sure, I definitely was I'll at least say I was working off that assumption.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I suspected it strongly, obviously, but this sort of confirmed it. Okay. So
what'll be interesting is if they try and then take executive actions and point back to this paper saying, and that absolutely could be something they're doing, because because they are still trying to operate legally, right? They have to like lay all this groundwork and, have presidential findings and things and be like, okay, see, because we have this finding, now it's appropriate for us to take this action, right? And then you use that when you get sued over the actions. And so maybe this is part of that, and that's why they put it out, is so they can use it, as the basis for executive agency actions going forward. But other than that, it's not particularly meaningful. And those actions will get sued over and fought out in court regardless.
Right. Okay, let's talk about Coinbase for a second now. So Coinbase famously received a Wells letter from our good friend Gary Gensler over at the SEC, and Coinbase actually said, you know what, we're going to fight this, whatever it is, and also sort of laid out their side of the story, which was basically some version of, we've been around since 2012. We went public 2 years ago. The SEC had no problem with us then. They knew exactly what we were doing. They knew all the coins we listed. When we asked them why we were getting this Wells letter and specifically what we should respond to, because that's the purpose of a Wells letter, is, we're going to sue you. Tell us why we shouldn't. And then they said, all right, why are you suing us? And the SEC said, well, we're not going to tell you. And we're not going to tell you which coins we have a problem with.
Yeah.
Right. So the Coinbase is like, look, we've been treated incredibly unfairly here, and the SEC has basically made this little box around us where there's actually no right answer, right? If you try to play ball with them, they sue you. If you don't play ball with them, they sue you, right? There is no way to, and they say come in and register. You come in and register. There's no way to do it. And as evidenced by the fact that they asked Coinbase for their advice on how to craft a process for someone to register with them. There obviously wasn't one. Otherwise, you wouldn't ask their advice on how to make a process to do that. So what do you think of this Coinbase situation? Is Coinbase correct? Or is there something else going on here?
So this is par for the course for anyone who's dealt with SEC around crypto stuff in the last 5 years. And I'm going to, or 10 years, however long. I think the whole the fact that the SEC didn't object to their IPO and is objecting now apparently is the perfect encapsulation. I will once again plug Matt Levine, and he summed it up very distinctly. It's like, well, yeah, but back in 2021, like crypto was popular and it would have been politically hard for them to go after Coinbase, but now crypto's not as popular, so they can. And
interesting. That's an interesting point of view. Yeah.
I mean, I think it's, and this goes to my bureaucratic, incentive view of the world, right? People at the SEC are, at the end of the day, humans with jobs, and they don't want to get fired from their jobs. Ideally, they'd probably like to get promoted at their jobs. And so they're not going to do things that make them unpopular, and they will do things that make them more popular. Which is, of course, ironic, because that means they didn't pursue anything that was a scam back before it was. And now they're like, okay, well, now that all these scams have happened, let's go after everything that's remaining. And it's like, okay, but everyone already lost the money they were going to lose. Like, you're not doing anything at this point. So, yeah, but yes, I mean, if you go in and try and talk to the SEC, what they'll say is cool, register under the existing securities framework. And then you'll say, okay, but the existing securities framework isn't workable at this reason, because of X, Y, and Z things, because crypto doesn't work like that. And then they'll be like, okay, register under the existing securities framework.
Right. It's very Kafka. It's like Brazil, right?
Yeah.
Where the bureaucracy is just so intense that like nothing can ever get through it.
Now, in fairness, the SEC is not really in a position to fix this. There is only one body that can fix this, which is the United States Congress, which needs to get together and write a new law. The problem is that the law doesn't cover it. And so, everyone would be honestly yelling and howling if the SEC wrote their own rules to govern crypto, because that's not their job. They're an administrative agency. They need to enforce the laws and the rules that Congress passes. So
by suing Coinbase has the resources to fight them, and they're going to fight, and they have the best lawyers on earth. Was this just like is the SEC just going to get crushed here in the end? Where do you think this goes?
We'll find out. I mean, I'd rather them sue Coinbase than like some tiny random person who doesn't have the resources to defend themselves.
Me too. Totally agree.
So, but Coinbase is kind of the one they had to go after, right? If they're going big or going home on this one, I think.
Yeah, this is the final battle. This is like the X-Wings are pulling up to the Death Star, right? This is that one. Yeah,
basically.
Totally agree.
Now, the other thing is, though, this is going to take years. Like, think about how long the Ripple case has been going.
Yeah, right.
Right? So first off, they can't even file anything for like 2 months because Coinbase has time to respond to the Wells notice.
Yep.
And then they've got to file a suit, and then they'll ask for an injunction, which they won't get.
Yeah.
And Coinbase will ask for a summary judgment or summary dismissal, which they also won't get.
Right.
And then the SEC is going to move to depose everyone at Coinbase, and Coinbase is going to move to depose everyone at the SEC, and they're going to go after Hinman and try and get Hinman pulled back into court again. The exact same way.
Explain who Hinman was, just for people.
Hinman was the former director or senior official at the SEC who gave a famous speech where basically talking about that the SEC is now trying to disavow basically that, this wasn't part of our deliberative process internally, and saying what and wasn't a security and how we're thinking about
it. He declared that Ethereum was not a security while he was chair. I believe he was chairman of the SEC.
I think he was number 2. Anyways, point is, it's very senior. So again, this is going to be years of litigation that go into this, but hopefully, I don't know, hopefully we get some guidance out of it. But ultimately, at the end of the day, the only way you're going to have actual true regulatory clarity around crypto is either A, if they do manage to kill it all, or B, if Congress gets off their butts and actually does their jobs and writes laws governing this stuff, which is never going to happen because our Congress can't do anything.
Yeah, well, I think look, there are definitely more people that are on the side of good in Congress now than there were. So we have a lot of voices like Emmer and people like that who are actually writing bills and doing things and are making statements that are very pro crypto. And so I look, it's a better situation now than it was, but there's probably still not enough consensus in Congress. And of course, Biden will just fucking he'll just veto anything that comes across his desk anyway, right? I would think based on what that opinion paper showed. So I agree with you. The gridlock probably remains.
Yeah, it's not even that it's a problem around crypto. It is much more just around like how unbelievably just stopped up everything around Congress is. They can't get anything done.
True that. All right, last topic, and I'll let you go. Ordinals. So a lot of people sort of in the Ethereum universe, in which I generally move, kind of know nothing about ordinals and like what's going on over in the Bitcoin universe. And being a Bitcoin guy, and building your universe around this sort of extra added functionality around Bitcoin, tell us what ordinals are and how you're involved with that.
Sure. So you'll hear ordinals referred to as like Bitcoin NFTs or something, but they're actually far more than that. What it is, it's the combination of two things. One is the ability, as folks may know, a Bitcoin is made up of Satoshis, right? Like that is the subpart.
Those are the pennies, if you will.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it was Bitcoin, Satoshis have always been completely fungible to each other. But it turns out using this thing called ordinal theory, you can actually uniquely identify each one. You can also assign rarity to them based on that, like where in a block that they fall and where that block falls inside a halving period and a cycle.
So this Bitcoin has 100 million Satoshis in it, and they're actually in an order.
Correct.
And it's like each one has a serial number.
Exactly. So you can uniquely identify every single Satoshi. You can also write data onto things now, basically because a Taproot, every Bitcoin block can have like 4 megabytes worth of data attached to it. Now, this was meant to be for like signature data and other things, basically to preserve privacy and make things more secure. But it's just a text box, as I like to say, it's just a text box on the internet, right? You can write whatever you want in it. And so what people found is like, hey, cool, I can now write data associated with a specific Satoshi, right, and basically turn it from a fungible token into a non-fungible thing, right?
Yep.
Now, the thing that's really, really cool about this in particular is that unlike traditional NFTs, and these are called inscriptions, the thing that's really cool is you are actually inscribing the data on the chain. I can take a picture and I can write it into the Bitcoin chain.
And this is opposed to Ethereum or NFTs.
Yeah, NFT.
You make an NFT.
It's a pointer.
The picture, the picture's not actually in the NFT, right? Or the JPEG or whatever. It's somewhere else.
The OpenSea API
it's like a URL.
Away,
so
right?
Just to be clear, so basically, if I don't pay my AWS bill and the JPEG for my Bored Ape was up on AWS and now it goes away because I didn't pay my bill, now you've got an NFT with no picture. Like that has happened. Right, so what you're saying is that can't happen in the Bitcoin universe.
Right. As long as the Bitcoin chain exists, the inscription data will be there. And so that's really powerful. It's really cool. And it's activated a huge amount of excitement around making Bitcoin programmable. And so, Mark mentioned I'm the CEO at Hiro Systems. We are the dev tools company for Stacks, which is basically a layer 2 on Bitcoin that makes Bitcoin programmable. All the smart contracts, all that functionality, the compute layer basically that Ethereum has on its L1, because there is no compute on Bitcoin, we're adding it as an L2. Now, so we've known for a long time, it's been our thesis for a long time, that look, there's more asset value in Bitcoin than anywhere else. There's more people holding Bitcoin than anything else. People are going to want to do more there because everyone's already there. And I think that's what Ordinals has kind of proven. So, you've already seen a bunch of people come over and do basically mints on Ordinals to capture this excitement. So, a couple weeks ago, Yuga Labs, who does Bored Apes, came over and did their 12-fold series, which you can see at 12fold.io. And I think they did 248 of them or 280 of them, 200-ish something of them. And they sold and made $16.5 million in an auction in 24 hours on it, basically.
Wow. So pretty crazy.
Yeah, it had a floor price of 2.3 or 2-ish Bitcoin was basically the floor price on it. For the actual initial auction. The Sappy Seals are doing stuff over there. I know Wob.eth is a great dude and has been really excited about it. There's a bunch of Ethereum artists who have started coming over and looking at what's possible there. You've also are seeing it used for other things. So originally the Stacks project actually started as a thing called One Name back in 2014, even before Ethereum was around, and it serves as the basis of the Bitcoin name system. So, if you go alexlmiller.btc and alex.btc, I have both. But now you can actually inscribe your BNS zone file into the chain itself.
So domains, effectively, like ENS, same thing.
Yep, exactly. So there are all kinds of things and all kinds of potential here. And, again, this is just, it's really captured the mind around people of okay, cool. There is programmability. There's more that, while Bitcoin is great as the money layer, you can do more with it. And this, I think, has just really unlocked a lot of imagination about it. And that's why you've seen excitement from people for it.
Yeah, I saw actually just yesterday, I saw Magic Eden now has an Ordinals NFT store, which that happened really fast.
And actually just today, they also just added, Bitcoin NFTs via Stacks, right? So,
oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, well, we also because it was just announced, and Hiro was kind of a supporting partner on this. We're sending Bitcoin to the moon. So there's the Nakamoto 1 rover that's going to the moon in Q4 of this year.
Really?
And basically, yes, it's part of an intergalactic treasure hunt. And basically, what we've done is on the side of the rover will be a metal plate, and etched into that metal plate is a private key to both a Bitcoin wallet and also other chains, right? And whoever gets up there, and so there's going to be 24,000 NFTs that are auctioned off, and basically 25% of that is going to go into this bounty, and the bounty is basically whoever gets up there to the moon,
the actual moon.
Whoever gets to the moon and gets their hands on this rover can take off that plate, can take off that metal plate with the private keys there, and they will then be the owners of that wallet.
So the moon. So it's a moon wallet.
Yeah, and so initially it's going to be $1.5 million worth of Bitcoin.
Yep.
But obviously the value of that Bitcoin will go up. But also the other thing that's cool is the wallet addresses will be public, and so anybody who wants can take any NFT, any asset, anything, and burn it and send it to that wallet.
Oh wow! Right.
It's going to support a whole bunch of different chains and wallets. So the bounty, it's the first intergalactic treasure hunt that anyone can participate in. Look, obviously no one's going to get up there this year to get it back down.
Who's putting it up there? How is this thing getting on the moon in the first place? Is Elon putting it up there? How's that happening?
It's going up on a SpaceX rocket.
Okay.
And anyone can send something to space if they want.
And it's called the Nakamoto rover. I didn't realize that you could
Nakamoto 1 rover.
Wow, who's funding this space?
It's being funded by the Bitcoin NFTs that are going to be sold.
Wow, so basically you're going to get a bunch of money, and then you're going to pay Elon to send a rover to the moon.
Well,
Now,
the Elon part is a very small part. It's just going up on a SpaceX rocket, like the rover is being built by other people.
right, okay.
So if you know the Lunar Crush guys, they're the ones who put this all together in the first place.
So how soon will this thing be on the moon?
At the end of this year.
The end of this year. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is going to happen really fast.
Yep.
Damn, that's super cool.
So I want to say,
where can people find out about this? Like, where can they find
if
more?
You go to Lunar Crush /Nakamoto 1, the number 1.
Damn, super! I didn't know about this. This is super cool.
Yeah, it's
Bitcoin plus space. It doesn't get any cooler.
It really doesn't. I mean, this is going to be a very cool thing. And like you said, it's not like anyone is going to pull this off and get the rover back this year. But in 5 years or in 10 years, as the value increases, as the cost of space travel comes down, like someone is going to get up there and get it. And that's going to be really cool.
China will just send their man.
China doesn't like Bitcoin. It's fine.
Yeah, well, they say they don't like it, but maybe they do. Who knows?
Yeah.
All right. Well, I've taken up enough of your time, Alex. I really super appreciate you coming on at short notice. So anything else you want to plug before I pull the cameras?
If you want to try developing on top of Stacks and Bitcoin, we also just yesterday launched the Hiro platform, which is a completely web-based IDE for smart contracts and building. So as we put it, you can go brain to blockchain entirely inside your browser. It is a beautiful experience that's insanely fast. And anyone who wants to try out building on top of Stacks and Bitcoin should absolutely give it a shot.
Super cool. And that's Hiro, Hiro, not...
Yes, Hiro, for anyone who is a Neil Stephenson fan.
Hiro protagonist.
Yes. So check out hero.so or platform.hero.so to go straight to it.
Super cool. Okay, well, that's it. My name is Mark Jeffrey. This has been Hash Rate. We'll see you all next time.